Inside out. Okay, how are we doing tonight? Somebody just get quick vibe check in the room. How are we feeling right now? How are we feeling right now? We got a few over here. We got a few over here. That's what I'm talking about. My name is Jordan. If we have not had a chance to meet yet, everybody say, "What up, Jordan?" Dang, you did it. That was sick. Okay, I didn't know. I didn't know if we would get it or not. It is good to be with you tonight. And man, I'm excited about this word that I think God's about to bring in here. It's going to be really awesome. I am 27 years old, in case you're wondering. And when I was 21 years old, I did maybe one of the most brash things I've ever done in my life. I had just graduated college. I went to Florida State University. There's nothing exciting. Wow, we got one. Okay, it's full. We're full of heartbreak. We lose things. Feels like my love life, honestly. Just heartbreak and rejection is what being a Florida State fan is like. I'm just kidding. That was a joke, okay? I don't have a love life. So, when I was 21, I just graduated from college. And I had this job offer that was like a good, tell your parents you got this, put it on the resume kind of job offer. And I brought home and I told them about it, and that was great. And then a month later, I did a bunch of things in quick succession. I graduated college. I had no job at all, except for that one that was going to start soon. And so I decided what I would do is I would quit that because I just didn't feel like doing it, and I would just Uber drive instead. So I became an Uber driver, and I drove around until I had enough money and made my next rash decision, which was I bought a ticket to go to Southeast Asia by myself for about 2 months. This is me leaving. That's me. That's my ticket. I took that picture the day I was going to Thailand. This one was to Hong Kong. Then I was going to go from Hong Kong to Thailand. And you can imagine my parents were very, very, they had a lot of questions about what was going on here. Because I had no job, I had no nothing, and I was just an Uber driver that now is going to go across the world by myself as a 21-year-old. And I did. I went across the world. I get there, and everything about it was disorienting. I landed at 2 in the morning in Thailand. I was in Bangkok, Thailand. I landed at 2 in the morning, and I just had not thought about anything. I'm not much of a planner. Anyone else in here, you're like, I'll figure it out when I get there. Yes, okay, there's a few of you. That was me. I was like, I'll figure it out when I get there. So I bought the ticket. I get there. It's 2 in the morning. I'm arguing with the guy over how much it's going to cost me to get to where I'm going to stay. I get to where I'm going to stay at 3 in the morning. I'm on a dark street way across the other end of the world. I can't find where I'm going, and my phone doesn't work, so I don't really know. And there's one dude walking in the street who looked like he had had a night. That's all I'm saying, okay? And he was walking by, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I know where that is." And so I just walked with a random dude at 3 in the morning down the streets. I do not recommend this, okay? Don't tell your parents I did this. But I'm walking down the street, and he gets me in, and I enter a dark room. I'd paid $12 to stay in this room for the night. 12, okay? Count them, $12, because that's all I had. And I stayed in this room, and I woke up the next day, and it was I don't know, I just had this realization waking up of oh man, everything that I'm familiar with is very, very, very far away. Everything that I know, all my people, what in the world am I doing right now? This is crazy. And I went to dinner my first night, and I'm not kidding when I say this. I met all these people during the day because I was like, I don't know, I'm just going to go out and meet people. So I met a bunch of people, and I'm at dinner that night with people from 10 different countries. It was really cool. None of them were America. And I was there, and I immediately realized that I didn't know how to talk to people when I didn't have my context with me. Here, what I do is when I talk to somebody, I talk about oh yeah, I'm friends with so-and-so. You probably know them too. Here's a connection. Or oh, you're from that town. Well, let's talk about that town because I went there once or whatever. And out there, it was they'd tell me their town, and I'd be like, cool. What continent is that on? Could you tell me real quick? You're I lost that. Or I thought that I was funny. I thought, okay, at the time that I was funny. But then I realized that every joke that I had, every bit of humor just wasn't working with people outside my context. So I would just go full send on a joke, and they'd look at me and be like, cool, what continent are you from? Like it was just a weird moment. Or like it didn't matter where I went to college because no one knew where my college was. And it didn't matter what town I was from. It didn't matter. Well, so much of what I did and what I had identified myself with did not matter anymore when I was sitting at that table. And it was a super disorienting moment because I realized, I was like, who am I without those things, right? Who am I with all these boxes that I put myself into when I don't have those to define who I am? And I think a lot of us, we put ourselves in boxes, right? And that's not always a bad thing. Like maybe you're an athlete. Any athletes in here? You play a sport? Make some noise, okay? Yes, you're out there. I know you're there. There you are. We got athletes. Did our cheerleaders, did you say yes to that or no? Which one did we say? Yes? Yes? Yes. See, I believe so. I'm on board with that. I think you guys should cheer for the athlete thing. And maybe you're an athlete. Some girl said no. Nah. Maybe you're an athlete and you're like, yeah, ball is life. Like, I love it. Maybe you're like a Danny Rojas on Ted Lasso. Any Ted Lasso fans? Where you're like, football is life. Like, that's who I am. Or maybe you're a band kid. Any band kids in here? Make some noise if you're a band kid. Okay. My man outed his friend right here. He pointed at his friend next to him because his friend wasn't putting his hand up. Less for them. Maybe you're the band kid. And maybe you're like, tuba is my life. Like I'm the tuba player, right? Is anyone a tuba player in here? That would be awesome. Yo, stand up real quick. Stand up. Everyone give it up. We got a tuba. Wow. You are the salt of the earth. I mean, we need more tuba players in this room. We have another one? Oh my gosh, you too? I don't even know what I was going to talk about tonight, but tuba players in the room just got me excited. Like, I don't know what about it. I don't know how you get into playing tuba. Let's talk later, okay? Let's talk later. We're back on track. Maybe you pride yourself on your academics and you're like, I'm the smart kid. I'm going to be the one that's going to get into the Yale or the Harvard. Okay, that wasn't me. But maybe that's you, where you're like, yes, that is who I am. Maybe you define yourself by the friend group you're a part of and the people that you associate with. Maybe you define yourself and you put yourself in the box of like which parties you get invited to, or maybe you put yourself in the box of like what your family is like or where you're from or what part of town you're from. Maybe you put your identity into the box of like my family makes a certain amount and that means something for our family, whether that's high or low, like that means something for my identity. Maybe you put yourself into different boxes, maybe deeper boxes that are below the surface. Maybe you put yourself into a box of like a mistake that you made one time, and now you're like, man, I just live in the shadow of that one mistake I made. Or maybe you put yourself into the box of a limitation that you feel like you have. Or you feel like you're defined by not being quite enough. Or maybe you feel like you're defined by something that if the world knew, if your parents knew, if your friends knew, whatever that was, which I feel like they would think that I am crazy. Or I would feel crazy telling them. We all have these boxes that we put ourselves into and that we put other people into. And I think what those do, they're not bad. That's very natural. It's natural to kind of associate yourself and kind of trying to figure out who you are by association with the things you like and with the people around you and with the place you're from. That's not a bad thing. But when we find our identity in those things is when we start to get a little off center. Because everyone is unique. Everyone has their own interests. Everyone has their own background. And you have a story that is so unique. If we stood up here and you came up here and told your story, we would have hundreds of just different stories, and we would all be like, oh my gosh, how crazy that God has allowed you to be that unique and bring all these unique people into the room. But it does help us to find some boxes that we can unite around and some boxes that we can help find our identity in. But when we find our only identity in the box of being an athlete or the tuba player, or of a certain relationship, or being so-and-so's boyfriend or so-and-so's girlfriend or whatever it is, what you're going to find is eventually you're going to get pushed outside of that and you're not going to know who you are. Just like I was sitting at a table on the other side of the country. And if you're following Jesus, or you're just here and you're just checking it out, and you're like, no, that's not really me yet, but I'm here for the good times, you know that there's a Christian box as well, right? If you're a Christian, there's probably certain things that you think, oh, I have to be this way, I have to look that way if I'm a Christian. I got to pray 17 times a day so that God will like me. Or maybe if you're not a Christian, you're like, Christians are judgmental. They're all judgmental. I'm here, yeah, but they're all judgmental. And that's just a box, a definition that you've given, an identity that you've given to people who fit a certain box, right? And all I want to do tonight, just take a minute of your time, is I want to walk through 3 people who I love in the Scriptures and show you what 3 very, very, very different backgrounds look like that are people that are heroes of the faith, people we've talked about, people names you will know. And I just want to get into their minds and into their lives and into their stories for just a second. Can we do that? Nod your head if that's okay. All right, tuba guy, can we do that? Other tuba guy, can we do that? All right, thank you so much. That's all. You guys are the only ones I care about in the room. Everyone else is just listening in on a conversation of us right now. First one is a guy named Paul. Everyone say Paul. You've probably heard of Paul. Paul was a hyper-religious guy. I say hyper-religious, like he grew up in this very, very religious Jewish family where he would have been the guy praying 17 times a day. Paul would have been the guy that knew the Scriptures inside and out. It's very clear in his writings that he had memorized much of the Old Testament. He would have been the kind of guy of this is not a joke at all. There was some people that took the traditions and the word, and they would literally write out Scripture, put it in a little glass vial, and tie it to his head in public so that he was keeping the Scriptures on his mind. Literally, just sitting right there. Try that at your school this week. That's what Paul's doing. And the only problem is that Paul is super religious, but when Jesus comes on the scene, Paul totally misses the fact that Jesus is God. And so he thinks that Jesus and Jesus' followers are attacking this religion that he has, attacking this way of life that he has fought so hard for. And so what he does is he goes out very militant-like and attacks the Jesus followers to try and save Israel, to try and preserve things as they are, to try and hold it. He thinks he's fighting for God, and he's fighting God's people. To the point that there's a guy named Stephen who gets killed for his faith. They throw stones at him until he dies. And Paul's standing right there watching it, approving. Okay? So that's Paul. Paul got so caught up with checking the boxes of religion that he missed God on earth to the point that he was willing to watch people get killed. Okay? That's a little thing on Paul. I don't know if anyone in here would fit the bill. Maybe you'd fit this one. I hope to the dear Lord that you don't fit these 2. But maybe you fit this top one, that you are that person just trying to check the boxes. Maybe you're trying to go to church enough, pray enough, post about the Bible enough to be in the Christian box so that everyone knows I am holy and things are perfect in my life. Maybe that's you. That was Paul's box. Next, I want to talk about the woman at the well. Everyone say woman at the well? Well, we don't have her name, so I put woman at the well here. But she has a name, and whatever it is, she was at a well one day. She's a Samaritan woman, and that means that she lived in an area called Samaria, which is kind of nestled in between Israel and Judea. We're going to class right now. And the Israelites in Israel and Judea don't like the Samaritans, and the Samaritans don't like the Israelites. They have this division between them. To the point that when the Israelites were trying to get between their 2 lands, they would go over to the Jordan River and around Samaria instead of going through Samaria because they didn't want to be associated with these people in the middle. So she is from outside. If Paul is from inside this tradition, inside the religion, the woman at the well is from outside of it. Not only that, she had how many husbands? 5. Count them. 5, okay? That's a lot of husbands. And Jesus says, I know, when they meet, he says, and I know you're with another guy right now who's not your husband. Okay? Not only that, but it seems like from the way the story is told that her town knows about this. And so she's got some shame, I'm sure, as she walks around her town because people know about her past. They know probably about some failures. They know about who she's been and who she's been with. And so the woman at the well is in this box of outsider. And in this box, it probably has some mistakes that she's made, some nights she would take back if she could. The third person is Peter. Everyone say Peter. Peter's a fisherman. Any fishermen in here? We got a few? Okay. I'm not one of you. I think I've told you guys I don't know how to get a fish off the hook, and that's why I don't go fishing. That is the one. What do you do? And when it gets down, I got to put a glove on? Like, I don't get it, okay? And once you have it, how do you get it on the grill? I do not understand. If any of you fishermen want to take me out fishing, great, let's do it. Peter's a fisherman. And in his society, that means he was in a different class of people, very different than today. You go fishing on the weekends, he was fishing for his life, and that meant that he was in maybe a lower class of society, probably a little rougher class of society. He was working every day. Probably smelly. Okay, that's something I do know about fish. This is my favorite story about Peter. One time he cut off a guy's ear. Anyone ever cut off a guy's ear? Nope. Okay. Peter has you beat there. You raised your hand over there. I would watch out for your friend right there. Peter cut off a guy's ear because these guys were coming for Jesus, and I love this about Peter. Peter is like a hot and cold guy. He is all about the extremes. He does not live in the middle. So a guy is coming to get Jesus, and Peter takes a sword out and just like cuts his ear off. And I don't know if he was trying to kill the guy or if he was just trying to scare him, and then he like missed. Either way, he was not going for the ear. There's no way. And so he just slices this dude's ear off. And Jesus is like, oh my gosh, again. And he takes the ear and like puts it back on the guy. It heals. Okay, I love the Bible. There's stuff like that in it. The same little weekend where that happens, after fighting, thinking he's fighting for Jesus, being the guy that's super brash and out there, Jesus is arrested. He's being beaten in a courtyard, and Peter shows up with a hood on, and these guys are like, oh, aren't you friends with Jesus? And Peter's like, no, I don't know the guy. Yeah. No, not at all. So Peter is in a few boxes of like, yes, being in maybe a lower class of society, and also in this box of like, he's super on fire for God, but also super prone to make giant mistakes for God or to speak out of turn. He's the kind of guy who's like a fire, ready, aim person, not an aim, ready, aim, fire person. He doesn't think about the things that he does. And if we ended the story right here for these three and just said, all right, that's what they're defined by. It would be like if the story's not over. It'd be like if we ended Lion King when Mufasa died. Like, that's not the end of the story. You would want your money back. It'd be like if the Marvel Universe ended when Thanos was just like that. But what I love about God is he does not define these people by their mistakes. He doesn't define them by their past. He doesn't define them by their shame. He doesn't define them by their class in society. He does not define them by what they have done. God gives them a totally different identity. And the identity is himself. Paul, the hyper-religious guy who watches Stephen get killed, Jesus encounters him on this road to a place called Damascus, shines a light in his eye, reveals himself, and says, I am Jesus. And Paul's like, this is awkward. I guess I was wrong. And he turns his whole life around and goes on to build much of the church outside of that Israel area. I mean, he's going countries and countries in today's terms of churches. Just huge, vast region around Europe in North Africa. He travels the rest of his life to build the church there, gives his life for the church there, and writes most of the New Testament. If you ever read the New Testament, there's a good chance it's Paul, the guy who had watched someone get murdered and approved of it. The woman at the well, I love this. This is so good. I'm going to read it for you. The woman at the well, she meets Jesus at the well, full of all of her mistakes. Jesus is like, yes, I know about all these things going on in your life. I know about what you think about yourself. I know what you've defined yourself by. And he says, but I want to give you what he calls the living water. Jesus transforms her life and says, those things aren't really that important to me now. What's important to me is that you're walking with me. What's important to me is that you repent, you turn back, and start walking with me now. And she goes into her town and just looks at everyone and says, guys. And they're like, yes, what? And you can feel people in the crowd being like, isn't that the woman who? And they're like, yeah. And she's like, I know you guys know. But I don't care anymore. Come check out this guy at the well who just told me everything I ever did and who I just, it seems like something's crazy is going on here. And she shows up, and here's what happens in this city in Samaria. It says, many Samaritans in that city believed in Jesus because of the woman's word when she testified. There it is. Many Samaritans in that city believed in Jesus because of this woman who chose not to define herself by her mistakes, not to define herself by where she had been or where she was born, but to define herself by the guy she had met at the well, which was Jesus Christ. And then there's Peter, the guy who's always up, down, doing these things. And what I love about Peter, there's a story about Peter. This one time, Jesus is looking at his disciples. He's got 12 dudes around him. And Israel had been waiting for a long time for a Messiah, a Christ, somebody to come and save them. They knew somebody was coming. They just didn't know who or when or what. And to claim that you were that person would have made you crazy or life-changing. And Jesus says, and what about you guys? Who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Peter says, yeah, I know. I'm the guy. I'm the guy that does things. I'm the guy that doesn't think too often. But here's what I know for sure, okay? I've defined myself by all these things in the past, and now I'm just going to define myself by this sentence right here. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And here's what we need to know today is that true identity flows from knowing God and being known by God. Y'all say that with me, all right? You ready? True identity flows. No, with some gusto. Come on, people. Here we go. True identity flows from knowing God and being known by God. You want to know what matters more than being defined by I'm an athlete, or what matters more than being defined by yes, I play the tuba, or being defined what matters more than a relationship, what matters more than a mistake, what matters more than what class of society you feel like you are in, what matters more than where you sit in the lunchroom, what matters more than anything you might define yourself by is God. It is knowing God and being known by God. And here's the awesome thing about it. When you find your identity in God, who you are doesn't change. If you find it in anything else, it'll fail you at some point. But if you find it in God, God will not let you down, and God don't change. And when you do this, then you can rebuild on all the things that make you unique. This is the only thing that really belongs in the Christian box is knowing God. It's knowing who God is and being known by God. That is your identity. If you're following Jesus, and for people in here who aren't, that's what we're saying is our identity is just we know God and we're known by God. And everything on top of that, everything you like to do, every place you like to go, every unique part of your wiring, it is so beautiful. It's a beautiful part of your story. God's given it to you. And the common denominator for us all is that our identity has to come from God. And then you let Him develop your personality from there. Now, we're about to go to our groups here in a second. Anyone love a group? Anyone love your group? Come on. Anyone love your group leader? A group leader in here that you're a big fan of? Here's what I want us to do. You ready? Before we go there, I'm going to pray in a second. But I want us to think about this in our groups. I want us to think about what boxes we're putting ourselves in right now. And I want us to think about the same question that Jesus gave to His disciples, which is, who do you say I am? Who is it? Who is God? And we're going to start to break down the things that we've put too much of our identity on, and we're going to give it to Jesus. And then we're also going to celebrate the fact that in our group, we have all sorts of different awesome personalities that were created by Jesus to know God and be known by God. And it is an awesome thing. And when we do that together, man, you're going to see freedom in your life. You're going to see more stability in your life. And you're going to watch as God does incredible things because you know your purpose, and he's going to send you out into the world to do awesome works. And it starts right here. Can I pray for us? Jesus, you are so good and so constant. You love us. You want to know us no matter where we've been, no matter what we've done. You care more about us than anyone that we know. I pray that we would in this room make our identity just being your beloved, your children. Break down, free somebody from feeling like they're in a box they can't get out of. Free somebody in here from feeling like they just need to check the boxes until you'll like them, because that's not how it works, God. You love us, and we're with you. It's in your name, Jesus. Amen.